CEO of Macy's, Gennette, is going to be joining me. He's also the chairman, and he's been the CEO since March of 2017, but he actually has been with Macy's since he began his career as a management trainee in 1983, I believe. I hope that's okay that I shared that date, but he's got a lot of knowledge, and now he's running the place, so we've got a lot of questions. So Jeff, come on out.
Hi, Courtney.
Thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. So you've been CEO of Macy's since March of 2017, but you've been with the company for a really long time. So you probably saw things that you really liked and you saw things that you wanted to change. You know, I follow every nook and cranny of Macy's, but maybe not everyone does. So can you kind of take us through your big strategy for Macy's and why you think department stores like Macy's still very much have a place in American society?
So, I'd say, Courtney, is that it's kind of back to the future. So the department stores, which used to have, when you think about all the categories that they used to have and all the services that they used to provide, that's really what we're going back to. So, when you look at what's happened in department stores over the years is it's gotten, because we had one single economic model, which was the own model, we basically ended up with just really apparel, accessories, and some soft home. And what you're seeing now with all these other new economic models, we've got lease models, we've got hybrid models, we've got vendor direct, we've got retail as a service. You're able to bring in a lot more categories that are really returning a department store to a lot more interesting, concepts, a lot more services that we can provide. That is a really interesting and fertile ground for us to play in going forward.
So what are some of those examples? Maybe not all of us have been at a Macy's in the last year and seen some of your changes. What is more experiential about Macy's now than
I don't know
the last 2
if
years?
Some of you are going to Herald Square tomorrow and you're going to take a look
That's right.
at during the tour. But Herald Square is a good example of where we're kind of changing the space to bring in more interesting things. So we have a lot of leases that go on in that store, which you would expect in a store of that size. And the leasing model in European and in Asia Pacific stores is a much different model than what it is in here in the States. And you have a look, the European model, it's about 50% of what all the transactions are being done with leased products. So when you look at a Herald Square, they've got things like Apple, you've got things like LV, you have the Burberrys and the Guccis of the world. So that's pretty customary. What you see differently right now in Herald Square is what we're doing with VR and what we're doing with things like retail as a service and what we're doing with the market concept. So it's the opportunity market is a place basically where we had a lot of excess square footage that we have now monetized, and we're basically opening that up for brands to transact. And we're providing those brands a kit. We operate the business. We have guides that take them through it. But this is a roving caravan of product. Products will be there for 2 weeks. If you're a customer, you're going to come into this space and you're going to see 20 different things, and it's going to be different 2 weeks later. And what we're doing for these brands is they pay us rent on that space. I consolidate other goods to make sure that I create that space for them, and I'm not cannibalizing any of that business. And then what we provide those brands is we provide them a customer that hasn't necessarily been exposed to them, because either they're a pure play or they're a brand that doesn't have healthy brick and mortar. And what we're also able to provide those brands is all the customer activity. So we record all the activity, how they shop, what are the hot spots of that brand, what keystrokes did they stop at, what features and benefits kind of stymied them, and you give them feedback about how their brand could be better. And we've tried this, and it's been in 10 doors. We're now going to expand it further. We see this in a lot more Macy's stores in the future. So that's an example of when you go into Herald Square, you're going to see something that's different. And it's part of like that men's furnishing space. And yeah, I consolidated space from dress shirts and neckwear. But now the market is giving us a lot of very interesting, new experiences. Customers are loving it. We're getting more repeat customers as a result of it. And that's one example. When you go into the furniture area, it's really what we're doing with VR and AR. And that is, the furniture business has always been kind of, we've been constrained by not having enough square footage to be able to show all the upholstery and case goods and mattresses. And it needed to be about 20,000 square feet. And now with VR, we can do all of big ticket or furniture in 5,000 square feet. And we can do it by basically putting a customer into a space, they put on the Oculus headset, and they basically are able to really see what all of our content is that goes in and out of it. They're able to imagine what that is like. It's increasing the basket size with that purchases by over 50%. The return rate is virtually nothing. And it gives us the option of being able to take something like big ticket into virtually any one of our brick and mortar stores. So MarkSend is our technology provider that we're working with on that, and they've been amazing partners. We started out in 2 stores, and we're going to be in 60 by the end of October. So examples of what we would expect a department store to be in the future.
When you think about brands at the market that didn't have a brick and mortar presence, is there anyone that you're looking at to see, hey, if that sells really well, maybe we want to do something bigger with Love Your Melon? I mean, what do you get out of it besides just the rental money and the traffic driving?
Well, that's you get this incubator of, market or story or fill in the blank. They're always going into great spots. So, there's major arteries in any department store, and on that main level, we do have a lot of traffic that still goes through there. And so you get immediate customer feedback. And so if it's Love Your Melon, or if it's Skinny Girl Jeans, or, if it's a 3D printing of an insole, if it's pop-up cards, there's so many disparate things that are going into market. You're immediately getting feedback, and you're making decisions. Do the merchants then bolt that into a lot more doors? Does it come into the own model? So we're using it as a laboratory. The brands love it because it's a laboratory of how customers interact with those brands, and that's good for them. But it also can lead to a much longer relationship, based on how well it's doing. So we found there was a brand that was called Detroit is the New Black, and it was in our 12 Oaks store in Michigan. And that was an example of one that it was unbelievable how those customers responded to those products. And so we're now picking that up, and we're going to do it in a lot more doors as a result of how well it did in market.
Explain, if you can, to the audience that may be unfamiliar with the investment in Story and Rachel Sheckman, the founder of Story.
Yeah.
It's a very unique retail concept. People have really given Rachel a ton of credit for what she's built. But the big question is how do you scale something like Story and keep its specialness? And how does that exactly fit into what Macy's is trying to do?
Yeah, first off, Rachel is a unique talent and kind of a serial entrepreneur. Started Story 6 years ago, but had a lot of other businesses that she did before that. And she got onto our radar screen when we were doing a workshop for women and minority-owned businesses, and she came as to enjoy the wisdom that was going on with all the other women and teams that were there. So we got introduced to her there, and we got introduced into the concept. And so many people in retail have been shopping every one of her stories for the 60-some that she has made over the years. But the play with Story was not for just the store in Chelsea. And the play was really to what would Story be in a lot more Macy's stores. And I think, you and I have talked once before about, the nexus of omnichannel retail is going to be really strong digital capability, but healthy brick and mortar, and the opportunity to change the experience of department stores and brick and mortar. And we needed a real thought leader that would help us reimagine the opportunities to create a different experience in store. And so we acquired Story because we believe that Story can be exported, that it can go into a lot of Macy's locations, and that's one of her big projects, is to figure out what does Story 2.0 look like in Macy's stores that replicates the general philosophy of it, that it changes like a gallery, it sells like a store, but it has the editorial point of view of a digital site or of a magazine. And so you would expect that it could be thematic, as it is today, but it could be, it's definitely the opportunity to bring in a community space into that particular space, and that's what she's working through right now. So expect us to transact on that and be ready in 2019 with what that looks like in Macy's stores.
I'm excited to see what that's going to be like. You talked a little bit about virtual reality and things like furniture. Augmented reality is also something that Macy's is expanding in. Beauty is one area, so you can sort of virtually try on makeup at the beauty counters. Beauty has been a strong point for you, and it has been in an upcycle. At least, look at the same-store sales that Ulta's put up, or Sephora.
Sure.
JCPenney did something brilliant many, many years ago under Mike Ullman and did this partnership with Sephora. Have you ever looked at a partnership with an Ulta to expand your beauty offering?
So what I'd say is that beauty is definitely a fertile ground for us, and we've had market share taken from those two competitors you talk about. They're really good at it, and they're fierce competitors. And so we need to win in beauty. And so when you look at our beauty business, we look at it from a fragrance perspective, and then we look at it as color and treatment. And fragrances check the box. We're doing well there. We have a significant share, and we continue to take share in that particular business. So we've got the brands, we've got the kits, we've got the exclusive products, we've got the selling colleagues, and we definitely have the customers for it. The beauty business has been, or color and treatment, has been more difficult for us. And I think the real key for us was starting to look at it as a customer does. And this may seem obvious, but the beauty model in department stores was always built on a brand-centric model. And you don't want to necessarily deal with the woman in the white lab coat if you're looking for trend. And if I was to open up your drawer at home, I would see probably 20 different products.
That's right. Yeah, you don't want to just shop one brand.
A woman
for all your
or some men
products.
in this room that don't carry multiple products. And so to have a brand-centric model was not living in the land of where a consumer is. So we wanted to be able to keep the advantages of brand centricity, where that made sense for a customer who wants to shop for all things Estee Lauder, but we also wanted that colleague to be cross-trained on all other content that would serve a modern customer. And also have a physical space where you could try on, where you could play, where you don't feel like somebody is hovering over you with a commission to make. And so that's really been our journey. And I would tell you that we've got lots of support from our brands and our vendor community on it. We've used technology to create something called the Beauty Playground, which is really a platform by which our colleagues get up to speed with all things beauty, where they're not just trained on the brand that is helping pay for their salary, but they're cross-trained on all brands, and they're working with customers now. The customers are loving it. We've done a lot of open cell formats, which is transacting. The return on that investment has been quite good. We're converting 50 more doors by this holiday season, and we're getting better at it. But we're in the early stages of being a more relevant beauty house. Take full credit for where we are in fragrances, but a ways to go in color and treatment, but with ambition to do something that is wholly right for the customer in how we create environments and how we create compensation programs, and ultimately how we serve these consumers.
So you acquired Blue Mercury, but beyond that, you want to build your own beauty business. You want to sort of rip the guts out of how you used to do it and rebuild it on your own. You're not looking for a partnership with an Ulta like JCPenney has done with the Sephora.
Not right
That's
now.
Not for you.
When we bought Blue Mercury, it was this idea about doing a customer-centric strategy. And they've been brilliant at it. And so what we've done there is we basically have rolled out external, locations, but we've also brought them into Macy's stores. And those stores are doing quite well, those store within stores. And what we're learning is we have access to new brands. Marla Beck, who is the founder of Blue Mercury, is a real leader in this industry. She's got a real pulse on kind of the zeitgeist of the customer and is bringing in new content into Blue Mercury and Blue Mercury within Macy's stores. And that's all doing quite well for us. So that's one example of a beauty strategy that we thought we needed to require something for, but not looking to collaborate more broadly than that.
And experience is a really big deal for you, especially when we're talking about the stores. Consumers need a reason to come into a Macy's store. What about adding a manicure bar or a massage area, services for the beauty? Is that part of it? I mean, you can't get a manicure on Amazon.
That's right, you can't.
At least not yet.
That's the beauty of so to speak, of Blue Mercury, is that they have spas. So what you have with a spa in each of those locations is, in the Blue Mercury, it's about 3% of the business, but it touches 40% of the sales. So those are the stickiest customers. They're there for the service. That is kind of a loss leader. But when you think about the products that are appended into those sales, it's quite good. So to have a spa space, and you need an esthetician to be able to do that, it has to be licensed, obviously. And then to have that space, though, be available for the other beauty brands that will be doing special events has turned out to be a real win for us. So to keep that spa area fully booked with all the activity that can go on a beauty floor, and really incenting our teams to make sure that they got that level of animation going on at all times, that's part of our go-forward strategy. Speaking
of stickiness, you've reinvented your loyalty program. It sort of looks more like an airline structure with the levels of the gold, the silver, bronze is the newest level. Why has that become important, and how does it help you track your customers and then grow new ones? I know as a retail reporter, I sort of gloss over a lot of loyalty programs, and I think everyone has one because you have to have one.
Yeah.
But yours actually seems to be really showing some interesting findings.
I think that our loyalty program is launched in stages. And so we launched it over a year ago, actually just about a year ago, in what silver, gold, and platinum levels were. And that was for our existing customer base. Love the ones that are with you and make sure you're giving her really discernible value based on her loyalty to us. And in the past, the Macy's loyalty program was just, customers didn't know what the heck they were getting for what. They'd show up at a register, they'd have an extra discount applied. It wasn't motivating behavior. And frankly, we weren't getting deep loyalty where they were saying, wow, this is a reason why I'm going to continue to shop in this store. They liked goods and services, but it was just not as focused as it needed to be. So we needed to lay, and there were many, many programs out there that we admired, airline programs, other retailer programs. We studied all of them. And so we spent, a good 18 months testing. We tested a number of months, really doing A/B testing, getting them in front of consumers. What did they respond to? And we had to be committed that whatever that level was, that the level above it was going to give her more value, that it needed to be arithmetic that way. And that was very important to us, and that has turned out to be quite strong. So what we launched, the silver customer aspires to get the benefits of the gold customer. That's when free shipping kicks in. And when you are aspiring to be a platinum customer, you're getting 5% back, no vendor exclusions, on anything that you buy. So that has been very sticky. And when you look at that top customer, which is about 50% of our business, it is really wildly seeding her behavior in a very positive way. So that took care of the customers that were already with us. But it did nothing, really, for the customers that we didn't have in our doors. And that's why we went to the Tender Neutral Bronze program that we launched about 3 months ago. And the intent on that was basically to have a tender neutral program for a customer that is either a loyal Macy's shopper who doesn't want to put it on a Macy's card, or just somebody that is, an occasional shopper and didn't want to, get another credit card. And our objective on that is to get them in. They then see the benefits that are better in the silver level of the loyalty program when you use the Macy's card. And that's what's happening. So our first goal in this thing was to get as many bronze members and have a specific number that we would be at by the end of October going into the holiday season. And we've hit all those benchmarks. So it's been really strong so far. And then the opportunity to start using your loyalty program versus just giving discounts, but to start to give memories. If you think about the Macy's brand and you think about all the things that we can offer, flower show, Thanksgiving Day parade, all those things that we can do with stylists, vendor access. Those are things that we're layering on that have less of a value to us than they are a value to the customer who's getting them. So that's how we've been looking at the fullness of the loyalty program, and to really start with kind of the brass tacks of value, but then starting to layer on services that have value to a customer. So I would tell you we're in the beginning stages of this, and we're not declaring victory. It's been good, but we have a ways to go, and the bronze program is in its infancy.
Macy's loyalty program has turned out to be good, but you know who has the best loyalty program is Amazon, and we pay for it. We pay a subscription for that loyalty, but it's pretty incredible. Morgan Stanley thinks they're going to be the #1 in U.S. apparel share by 2018. They were pretty close in 2017. Why do shoppers still need to go into a store? Even if they want Macy's, why don't they just go to Macys.com? And by the way, your profit's probably a little lower because you got to pay to ship it to them.
I still think that every omni-channel brand, Amazon included, is going to have a brick and mortar presence. I think that there's something really powerful about offering the customer all channel access to your brand. And, I think that when you look at how customers transact and you look at where they're shopping and where they're browsing, and our most powerful customers, and any retailer would tell you this, are those customers when you give them full access to your channels, when they're shopping in multiple categories. And your job as a retailer is to make sure that you're eliminating as much of that friction that's inherent in that journey as there is. When you look at a shopping journey, and if you say, let's plot how the customer interacts with dresses or fine jewelry or name the category, and you start to think about where she browses, where she gets ideas, when she goes to Instagram, where does the brand show up so that you're helping her in that journey? Then you help her through the transaction. How do you make that as easy as possible? You're using technology and the mobile device to be able to do that. If she wants to try something on, then be a portal to be able to do that. And that's where brick and mortar may come in. Or if she wants to basically have somebody actually help her, a human body, which, Amazon may have that on the way, but I will tell you that there still is a lot of customers that want to interact with guides who are at their beck and call, depending on whatever they need. And at the end of the day, then who are following up with them in post-purchase? How did that purchase work out for them? What other needs do they have? Who else in their household are they thinking about that have needs that we could potentially serve? So I think, when you think about this omni-channel customer, the more portals they're in and the more categories they shop, the deeper their loyalty is. And I think any retailer would tell you that. So when I think as myself as an omni-channel retailer, I want to be in every DMA in the country, because where I have a brick, my click and my penetration by zip code in my digital business is significantly higher. The second I close a store, and if I am avoiding that market, my digital business is dropping. And when you add it, the digital business goes up. So what we look at is every DMA, we look at where they're growing and where they're not, which ones are donating share to others, where do we want to have bricks, where do we want to maintain them, what's the role of bricks? And we don't have a monolithic approach to that any longer. We don't say that every store is going to be like Herald Square. We look at our flagships. Those certainly have, all 5 senses, mouth-watering experience, do a better job with those. The economic model supports it. Then you look at your kind of regional centers, where you've got our mall developers that are totally changing the complexion of that real estate. And they're pulling out, apparel and accessories, and they're adding in food and beverage, they're adding in experiences, they're adding in experiential places. And when you see that happening, and we're mixing our changes, those regional centers are going to become more and more potent. There just isn't enough of them. So then you have this whole other body of neighborhood stores. And those are places that people love to transact with, because it's their favorite store. But they better be hyper-localized, and they better be making sure that they're easy and efficient. And so if you want to go in their store to buy something online and pick it up in the store, you want to do a return. But what are those things that are relevant for that localized community? It's important that your localized neighborhood stores have that, or those stores will go away. If you don't make a reason for customers who are ready to stop in there like they would at a local grocery store for milk and for basics, or for any of the fulfillment options that they have, and you're not speaking to her in a powerful way, that store won't survive. So I was in Medford, Oregon this past Friday, and this is a $21 million store. It is a sub. And it's in a mall that is about a C mall, okay? So not a great mall. You don't see a lot of investment going on in it. But when you walk into that store, and that store's been doing really well for us, but I went in and unannounced, and I really wanted to see, if I walk the store, I want to get a feel for the store, the character of it, how's the engagement of the colleagues with the customers, and what does it stand for? Are we standing for the community in that store? And what I saw there was, you look at Free People, which is one of our brands, and it basically represents the lifestyle of freestyle. And it's the number 10 Free People store in the nation, and the store is well into the hundreds. And that's what I mean by localized distortions. You want to be able to see that in every one of these neighborhood stores. So do the neighborhood stores right, your regional power centers, and your flagships. So you're not taking a monolithic approach to a brick and mortar. But I believe that is the journey that every omnichannel retailer will go through. And brick and mortar is going to remain important. And you got to have a developed website, you got to have a mobile app that connects all the activity, but you better be good in brick and mortar, or those will go away.
Do you think you're right size right now with your store fleet? You went through a pretty big store closure program. Is that it for a while, or does this change year to year? I mean, how quickly could a store go from a good store to a not so good store?
Yeah, we're looking at it all the time. But we made a decision back in August of 16. That's when we made the decision to close 100 stores. And that's not because any of those were not cash flow positive. We looked at those because we looked at the full map and said, okay, in these DMAs, how many stores can they support? What are the important malls within it? And then we made the decision, okay, we don't need these. And a lot of it was based on all of the acquisitions that Macy's and May Company and all those had made over the years. In some cases, you had malls that were like a mile apart or 2 miles apart. So that's when we made the decision to close 100 stores. We will always do pruning. There's still going to be stores that are much more valuable as a piece of real estate than in our value to operate it. But I would tell you that I'm pretty happy with our portfolio right now. And as I've described in kind of the 3 buckets of our investment in brick and mortar, I feel like we have a path forward for scalable investment that makes prudent sense.
The last several quarters, I believe 3 quarters in a row, you've had positive same-store sales after a number of quarters of declines.
14.
Yeah, 14, yeah. So you've had some good progress, of course, and double-digit e-commerce for 36 straight quarters, something like that, I think 36. But the consumer is also very strong. A lot of retailers are seeing, I think it's fair to call it a resurgence, although I never believed that retail was truly dead. So how much of the recent success that Macy's has had can you attribute to the changing strategy, and how much of the consumer gets credit for this?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think that definitely all boats have risen. And when you look at, we have some clear, the tax change, the strength of the consumer right now, the confidence level, the low unemployment, that has contributed to all retailers doing better. I think our strategies have helped. I think we've got a very flexible strategy that has a lot of relevance for this year and in years past. And I think we've got a team that's executing, better than ever. One thing I can tell you is that in the culture of the company, I think we're all aligned on what we're all attempting to do. And when you look at our path to growth incentives, and all eligible, colleagues are on a quarterly incentive program in addition to their base. That has helped the morale of the company. It's reduced our turnover within the company. So I think that we are, and I look at really how GAFO is performing versus how Macys is performing. And when you look at that gap, we're narrowing that gap. We're still not at GAFO's overall, increase, but we're certainly better than the declivity that we had on that from years past. So that's getting better, and that's ultimately going to be the mark for us. Is are we growing at market or better than market? We were in 2011 through 14, but we haven't since. So that gap is getting narrower, but we still have a long way to go. So I'd say it's a combination. Great tailwinds, strong economy. Some of it is our strategy. And what are we taking into the fourth quarter is what we look at every single day. And so when macro conditions change, we're responding. And we think we have the team and the agile organization to do so.
Speaking of macro conditions changing, things seem to be coming out of Washington every day that really change the way that business is conducted. Are consumers going to be paying more if more tariffs are imposed on Chinese goods from the United States? I mean, ultimately, will you absorb it? Are we paying more? Is there any way to avoid this?
It's obviously this has not gone the way that we had hoped it would. And so with the recent announcement even today, we do expect that, there's going to be more tariffs, and it's going to start to affect, a department store retailer more significantly because of the apparel pieces that are going to be part of it. So what I can say is that we've been working certainly with our own supply chain. We've been looking at our own private brands, and we've prepared for this. We have great relationships with our wholesale partners that in the apparel zone that do a lot of importing that comes out of China. They're preparing for this and have been preparing for this. But ultimately, it's too early to tell about how this is going to affect the consumer. In some cases, you're not going to see those costs absorbed, and they're going to get passed on. In some cases, we're going to absorb it where we can, and we're going to see how the customer votes on this. But not as we had hoped, but as we do with anything that comes our way, we need to have a strategy and a team that's ready to respond to it, and we will in this case too.
Got it. Well, I could talk to you for like 3 more hours, but I think I have to take a couple questions before everyone gets to go to the refreshment part of the evening. So if there's any questions and anyone wants to jump up to the middle here, I'll ask one real quick while we're waiting for her, if you can. You brought up bonuses. You're going to be hiring for the holidays, thousands of people, unemployment historically low levels. Where are you going to find them? I mean, are you really going to be able to find quality employees at the levels that you need?
I think, I'll speak for Macys. We prepared for this. Because when you saw, those tailwinds that are helping our business, in the record low unemployment, you better have a plan. And so the first thing that we did was making sure that our own house was in order with, colleagues that were having positive morale. How could we bring down the turnover rate? And making sure that the base that we have isn't churning at historical rates. And so we really looked at this path to growth incentive program to help with that. And it was every full-time, every part-time, and every seasonal hire is how we plan for this. And so mission accomplished. We were able to, in the first quarter, pay 75% of all eligible employees a path for growth incentive. It was 80%, in the second quarter. So we have much less turnover than we had last year across the company, which is a good thing. So this population that is seasonal that we're now able to offer a path to growth incentive program is another reason why they might want to come to Macys, and they're going to be entering a population that's happier to be there. And ultimately what I'd say is that there's momentum in the brand as much as I would say it's in early innings. And, the press has been more neutral to positive about the brand. And so when you're sitting around a kitchen table and you're looking at your options about what retailer you're going to go in to get an employee discount as part of your package, Macys is now more of a consideration than it used to be. So I think that helps our chances. What I'd say is our early hiring and our preparedness for that is at or above last year's levels. So I don't think this is going to be an issue for us.
Wow, that's incredible. I don't know where you're going to find them, but I hope you find them. Go ahead. If you want to just say your name and where you're from, that would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Sure. Shweta. I'm from RBC Capital Markets. I'm an internet analyst. Do you think that it's harder for a brick and mortar retailer to transition into an online channel and get the grow the frequency and the loyal base online, or the other way where Amazon's also opening brick and mortar stores? So both are necessary, but what transition is harder, and how do you grow the frequency or the order value and the loyalty base on Macy's?
I think it's more difficult for a internet star to go into brick and mortar than the other way around. And not to say that, you see the investment that brick and mortar retailers, that historically brick and mortar retailers are willing to make in order to be more competent online. And that is a voracious level of funding that is always going to be needful. And I think what all retailers are figuring out is that you can't starve your home base of brick and mortar while you're taking care of what your needs are going to be online. And so I would say, to answer your question, is that going from brick and mortar to the internet is an easier prospect than the other way around. And the other thing I'd say is that in terms of where you're looking at the way in costs and how to manage all of that, if you can get a customer that is shopping across channels and a customer who is shopping across categories, you can get a lot more margin out of those customers, and the lifetime value of those customers and how you start to use data to seed them offers. If you see a base of customers that are responding a particular way and they have so many of the same characteristics, you're able to then personalize your offering that goes out to a new set of customers that would behave like this one, and that ends up being pretty profitable transactions for us. When we looked at adding Backstage, which is our off-price concept, into Macy's stores, A, we had the space. B, the competition isn't on mall. C, we had this thesis that if they shopped in both areas of that store, they would be a better customer. And what I would tell you is all three of those have turned out to be true. That a customer that's shopping both the Backstage and the full-price side of a Macy's store is giving us about 33% more in their basket over the trailing 12 months, and they're giving us 2 additional trips. So now what we do is we look at those customers and we say, how do they profile? And what is in the rest of the store are customers who would profile that way if they ever shop there? And how do we seed them offers that gets them into Backstage? So that's kind of how we're looking at it, and we look at what their online activity is, what it is in store, what can you learn from that, and having to be ambidextrous to be able to play with that channel activity to build in the lifetime value of a customer is what our journey is going to be, and how it's been.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Corinne Ruff, and I'm a reporter with Retail Dive. I'm curious, so Macy's has changed a lot in the time that you've been leading the ship there. We talked about 14 quarters of declines and a lot of store closures, now acquisition of Story, investments in loyalty programs and technology. I'm curious, what was the most critical part of the transformation in your eyes, and how did you prioritize and then execute that plan?
The most critical part for me was what the team around me, who they were, what capabilities I was missing, and my role at the time when I was seeding all this, I had a great mentor who was the previous CEO of Macy's Inc., Terry Lundgren, gave me a lot of latitude on this. So while getting the strategy ready, so what was the right strategy that would get us ready for battle in 2016, 17, 18, but would also be ready for the future? That was job one, but really getting the right team around me. So when you look at the top kind of 15 people at Macy's Inc. brand right now, 4 have got my kind of longevity, and the rest of them are within 2 years. And so really spending a lot of time on what those lenses needed to be, but making sure that not only did they have strength as individuals, but they also had strength as potential team members, that they, this goes around a lot about servant leadership, but making sure that they could serve the team and the needs of the team was highly important. And I, really have been fortunate by being able to cobble together this amazing team that is taking the brand forward. So that was job one. And I think the most important thing that you do as a CEO is, what's the strategy of a company? Getting the team around you that you're enabling to do it, and remove whatever obstacles are getting in their way. And focusing on those things that you can uniquely do, and stay out of the cornflakes on those things that you're entrusting the team with the right strategy to do for themselves.
I think we have time for one last question. Go ahead.
Hi, My name's Jennifer Sutton. I work for a company called The Gram List. We're a social marketing agency. We focus a lot on retail experience marketing in local markets. You discussed the leasing of space within stores to new brands from our pop-up style experiences. So I'm curious, how do you, as you roll that out to more markets, because you've seen the success, how do you handle the marketing of that in those markets? And how do you share that between Macy's and the brands that you're partnering with to kind of grow that in-store experience for people?
You know, I think all of it is that, the previous question, I think that the Macy's brand is now more flexible and more responsive to the consumer than we've ever been. And so as we start to get, and as you probably have read through, if you've read our history, is that we had a lot of inventory, it was moving too slowly. We're now in a position to be able to react to what's working. So if we've got something that is working, we're very apt to figure out a way to scale it into a lot more portals. And then the marketing piece then comes beyond it, is making sure that we're able to do it. Now that we can do that in a more personalized way, we have many modes of reaching customers that we didn't have. It's not the brute force of a direct mail any longer or a TV ad. So much more is going into personalized messaging in the digital channel and in the social space. So, again, we just have to have the right ideas, but we have a high appetite to, we're looking out as much as we're looking in about where those ideas come from. We have new models by which they can bolt into Macy's more easily. We're looking at all those tea leaves to Courtney's earlier question. If something is really checking for us, how much bigger can we make it? It's because the team is very motivated to continue to do just that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jeff. Really appreciate you being here with us today. Thanks for doing this.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.